Welcome back to the First Four Monster Games YouTube channel. I'm Lauren Kalil and happy to be teamed up with Apex Performance, where we are getting the insight that we need when it comes to nutrition. Apex Performance, they take all of the guesswork out when it comes to fueling, whether it's your day-to-day nutrition or you're amping up for a competition. They are your right-hand person to help you reach your goals. If you want to take your nutrition to the next level, head over to their Instagram page at APEXPNC and schedule a free consultation today. And here to talk all about nutrition, we have the founder, Brad Giglio, and we have the fifth fittest woman on earth, Alex Gazan. It's so great to have both of you here and two people who have been teamed up for some time now.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, I'm very lucky that Alex even talks to me, so I'm very happy that I get the chance.
I think she talks to you a lot, Brad, especially when we're at a competition so important like the CrossFit Games. Obviously, the people who are going to watch this segment, not going to the CrossFit Games, but going to a big competition for them, 2 Monster Games. And one of the things that I think we just want to hit right off the bat is how we can better prepare ourselves when it comes to nutrition for performance. So I want to hit, what are those 3 must-haves or go-tos when it comes to game day and making sure that we as athletes are ready? Alex, you've been through the ringer, you've experienced trial and error. What would you say is that first thing that is a must-do?
As of lately, I feel like a big priority for me is eating as much as I can the day before. You never know quite how much your nerves are going to affect your appetite, and how much you'll be able to eat. So if you can replenish your glycogen as much as possible while you still have your appetite the day before, that's probably like number one. Anytime you feel like you can eat, like eat, because like I said, those windows definitely come and go. Um, that's number one. Do you want me to go through all 3 or just one at a time?
We'll go one at a time because then I'm curious, Brad, as you're trying to help Alex prepare for the night before, are there a specific like group of foods that you think will work really well into helping performance of the next day? Or is it just, increasing carbs before bed, or what kind of structure are you really looking at?
Yeah, I mean that's a really great question. It's so athlete dependent, and like for me as a coach, I definitely lean hard on the athlete. So obviously, Alex knows what she likes. She knows what she feels good with. Anyone that I've ever worked with before in the past too, in terms of team stuff, the idea, I think we actually talked about this in like episode 1. The idea of like 24 to 48 hours out is really a place where you should be looking at fueling as best you can and getting like the good foods that work well for you, and really like leaning into those, because you're not going to really make ground day of, like exactly what Alex said. It's like you don't know what your nerves are going to do. You don't know, even if you do feel like eating, your digestive system could be off simply from nerves and anxiety or excitement or whatever the case would be, and it's not worth chancing it, right? So I mean, for me, it depends on like what they feel good with sleeping. Some people feel good eating more food prior to bed. Some people don't. The thing there is like, especially with her and I, when we discussed this last year, was like going through things and, like I said before, practicing it before we go into it. Because sometimes you could hear a piece of advice like this. They're like, oh, well, I need to eat before bed. And eating increases your blood pressure, and then you might not be able to fall asleep. So there's definitely other dominoes that fall. So lean into what you're familiar with. Don't change up new foods, and definitely give yourself some time to practice little things like that to make sure that it is the right move for you.
Alex, what is the second must do on game day for your nutrition?
Um, keep this is something that Brad did for me at the games that like was a game changer, is like keeping a variety of snacks with you at all times, because something might sound good at one point and sound terrible at the next, but if you have like 5 options, like gummy bears, applesauce, an orange, like maybe like after an event the orange sounds good, it sounds like fresh and like easy, or like maybe like I can only drink Gatorade right now, or like okay I can maybe stomach a Cliff Bar or a protein bar. So like I'd say like have a bag of a variety of foods on hand.
Do you have a good example of something that you thought was going to be so delicious and then you got off the competition floor and you're like, ew, I can't even look at this?
Uh, yeah, I mean, kind of a lot. Like my first year at the games, I didn't know any better, and I packed like meals. Like I had like rice
Mm.
and like salmon or like rice and chicken, and I remember like needing to go eat, and I was like, "This is disgusting." Like I'd like be like shoveling it in, like gagging, like while you're eating.
Mm.
So that's my example. Like I'm not good with like eating meals between events.
Brett, I feel like I can imagine you with a backpack, a fanny pack, all
He
the
did.
variety of
He
snacks.
literally did. He was like dad mode. It was great.
Oh, that's too
Yeah.
perfect.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, for me, it's like I very much take like the military mindset piece of it because as an athlete, and this is something that I want to do just as a coach, and what I want our coaches to do for other athletes they work with, is I want them to really just be able to focus on their thing. Like
Mm.
focus on competing, focus on recovering. They're gonna be talking to their coach about strategies and stuff like that. And the last thing that we want them to do is like, should I eat? Should I not eat? What should I have? Da, 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 da. And I did. I had a cooler backpack, and I would rock that thing. I'd walk back there. I had this thing full with stuff, and it was all things that she liked. Things that I also felt that sometimes would be necessary. So if we had more time between events and things like that, maybe she could get something in a little more dense that maybe she wasn't quite feeling in the moment, but would do a little bit just to one to kind of appease me, but two, there was also an energy portion that was important to it, but it would be minimal in that regard. I know one point. Obviously it was super hot and we had this thing. She loved the applesauce packets, but I texted her after one of the events that was outside. I was like, hey, what are you feeling? And she's like, I'm hungry. I could have like one of those rice bowls. I was like, sweet, I'll get you one. Sounds great. Got it. And I'm standing in line. There's like nobody next to the acai line, like the one in Madison. I'm like, I'm gonna get one of these too. And I went back and I gave her the chicken bowl and she took like a bite and she was like, I don't like it. And I was like, okay. And I was like, I have this. I bought the acai bowl for me. And I was like, I have this. She's like, yeah. And she started eating. I was like, perfect. So I gave I
There you
gave
go.
I gave the rice bowl to Jake, and then they like let him have that, and like it was cool. It's like it's true though. Like it's at that point, it's just getting calories. It's just like what feels good for you in that moment. Something's better than nothing. I think we've said that before too. Um, and she knows her body best, and I'm just there to support it. And we've done the work up until that point, so we know what makes sense. And yeah, she was able to execute the way that she wanted to, and my job was to keep it simple.
When it comes to tracking your macros on game day, how close do you want to be to them? Like, is it something that, you have your macros for training and then you build macros for game day? And I guess I just think of, you want to get food in. Sometimes applesauce might not sound as good as gummy worms. And while it's not the cleanest macro, maybe it doesn't matter as much on game day. Like, how much do those factors play a part?
For me, I don't really track macros on a regular basis. Like I have a ballpark, right? Like I have a rough idea of what I'm eating, but for me, like the time and stress outweighs the benefits. Like when I can
Mhm.
be within 10% of my range. So for me on game day, like tracking, unless someone like had it, I guess all mapped out and handed it to me, it doesn't really help. As
Mm.
far as like micronutrients and like clean eating, I would say competing is like the least healthy, like as far as like a holistic thing. Like
Yeah.
like people get done with competitions and they're like, I want pizza and ice cream. I'm like, no, I want like a salad and like vegetables because literally all you're eating is sugar, whether that's fruit sugar, candy
Mhm.
sugar, Gatorade, peanut butter and jelly, like because it's so hard to get down, like Brad was saying, those dense foods sometimes. So like I feel like at the games I had one like well-rounded meal and that was like at nighttime and it was like this place called was that Sweet Greens, I feel like.
It was something like that. It was good.
Yeah, it was good. It was like sweet potato, rice, like had veggies, had meat, and like I could handle like one of those a day, and everything else
Mm.
was simple, like really palatable, easy foods.
Mm. And maybe Alex's Brad, I'm curious, is Alex the norm when it comes to that stuff, or is that the way that you would treat anybody competing on game day?
Yeah, I would say for Alex, I mean, she has a really good head on her shoulders in regards to competing. I mean, obviously this last year, I mean, she's still, in terms of like the games, like fairly new to the spot, but I feel that she had like a really good understanding of like who she was and what she did and how she needs to perform. And I think her and Justin just did a ton of work of like understanding that stuff. So like she was a bit ahead. I've worked with tons of people before where they're like, these are my numbers. How am I going to hit my numbers? And I was like, that just needs to go right out the window because it's not going to happen. And what happens a lot of times from like an athlete standpoint there's a reason like sports psychology is like its own field, but it's like a lot of times athletes will have like, hey, my training macros are X, Y, and Z. Okay. The issue there though is like during competition, stress levels are increasing. There's no real good chance or opportunity to digest food. So like Alex said, it's like the palatable, like the palate and stuff like foods are like go out the window. Like that's the last thing that happens. And what happens mentally for an athlete that relies on that so specifically is that they feel like they're failing. And I know it's like from years of doing it with games athletes, especially, they feel like they're failing because they're not meeting their certain expectations that they were prior. And that can create some like insecurities around like how they're going to perform, how they're going to do this. And it's definitely not like that. That's again, like her and I, when we started working together last year and talking about stuff, we would look at like how her higher volume days were as she was doing like game prep and like what she was doing and what she was kind of like leaning on. And then we just used those things in competition because it was something she felt comfortable with. It was convenient. That's a good feeling. Like when you have kind of like that thing that you can rely on. So I mean, we looked at, and I do this with me, with anybody else too, is like we look at like kind of like bookending the calories. And I think I've talked about this before too, is like, if you can do like a good breakfast in the morning, if that feels okay, that's a good time to get in some calories in like your macros per se, and an end of the day, right? That's really the time where, we're outside of the event, things have calmed down, stress levels have managed a bit. CNS isn't quite as, crazy from all the competition. So it's a better time to maybe focus on like maybe meals that are familiar or volume of meals that are familiar. But in terms of like counting and stuff like that, and if that's your game, more like the days leading up, so that way that you have like a nice full battery going into these events. The rest of it for us is just really managing and maintaining glucose levels and glycogen for muscle contraction. Micronutrient stuff is a little bit more of a focus too, just making sure we're getting like full colored foods like fruits and stuff like that when we can, so that way we're feeling good from that standpoint. But other than that, counting's kind of you're kind of putting yourself in a hard spot.
Good to know. That's meant for training, not performance. And that leads us to Alex. What would you say is the third must do on game day?
Oof. This isn't like food, but hydration. So like electrolytes. I feel like it's easy to like miss a window of like drinking water, like you're busy, you're warming up, but like having your water on hand at all time with electrolytes. If you can one up it and just always have carbs with electrolytes, then you're like not wasting any time. You're getting some calories in with your water. But that was a big one, I think, like, because especially at the games, I don't, Monster Games is probably going to be hot too. So if it's hot and you're sweating, like, that's really important.
Yeah. And kind of speaking to that, this is July in Missouri. There's going to be an event that is outdoor on the turf football field. So athletes are going to be going from that crazy outside heat to, an indoor complex that has AC. You talk about hydration and obviously nutrition as a whole. How can athletes prepare for that if that's not something that they are used to?
You want me or Alex?
Brad, you start, and then we'll go back to Alex if she has additional insight from her perspective, especially knowing that we're going to Texas for the games this year.
I can tell you what it's like to watch from the stands. Like that's about it. Like I can like I'm good at that part. But I mean, in regards to setting yourself up for success from a hydration standpoint, because Alex nailed it. More often than not, people lose that piece of it. It's gotten a lot better over the last few years for sure in terms of like electrolytes and all that kind of stuff. The issue is though, is a lot of people think of like electrolytes as just like being consumed in your water. And that's a good place to get it. But at the same time, like if you're eating like high color foods, you're getting electrolytes within those too, because the vitamins and minerals that make up those electrolytes are available there as well. Alex is really great at this. She's really great. If you were to look at any of the stuff that she's, lots of colors. Like I would say, like eat the rainbow. Like I tell like a lot of people like that, eat the rainbow. You're gonna get a lot of those things. Salt and stuff like that. Sodium specifically is gonna be a little bit different, right? You're gonna probably need to supplement that a little bit with like drinks and stuff like that. We have like a ton of like great mixes now, which are really good. But in terms of like going like in and out, a lot of people got to remember like the hydration isn't necessarily the amount of water that you drink. It's the amount of water that your body has within itself and within its muscles to be able to utilize and cool yourself down, all that kind of stuff. If it's your first comp and you're nervous, like those things actually burn more water too. It's just like when you're cold and you're shivering, like you're at a higher risk of being dehydrated when you're cold. Especially if you have like a little bit of a shake going on, because it burns so much water. So those are also things to consider. And like, I always encourage people, simply be consistent. You don't have to like track your water or anything like that, but just making sure like if you're thirsty, it's probably a bit too late, right? And just being aware of like where you kind of fall within those parameters, making sure that you're done drinking fluids heavily 30 to 45 minutes before, so that way your stomach gets actually a chance to empty out those fluids. Small sips like 30 minutes in is a better way to go than like gulps and things like that, because that can also cause like cramping and stuff, even though they could be filled with like beneficial things like electrolytes. If you have too much fluid in your stomach, that can be a problem. And then the same thing after is typically, getting in fluids as soon as you can, but again, sips and drinks, not like gulps and stuff like that, because your system is in a very high state. So even though people are wanting to do the right thing, like, hey, I'm supposed to do this, there's also timing components and things to be considered that will help you optimize your recovery, which is all stuff that we do like with Apex and like working with people and finding out what that is exactly for each person. So so there's definitely different dynamics to it, but in general, just being consistent with your fluid intake and your electrolytes is going to be really good, regardless of the environment.
And Alex, kind of speaking to nutrition as a whole, is there anything else that people should really dial in on if this is their first competition and they're not used to having that heat acclimation training and going indoor, outdoor, 3 days long of competing, where just a normal competition, we typically have maybe 1 day of competition. Now we're looking at 3.
Yeah, I think I guess the last piece of advice would be like more mentally than anything, like just expect it to not feel ideal, and then like know that everyone else is in the same boat with you. Like it's really easy to wake up on a competition day, especially after day 1 or day 2, and you're like, shit, my legs are already so bad, like I can't even walk. Or like, shoot, it's day 2 and I'm not hungry and like my recovery is gonna be bad. Like odds are 95% of the people are in the same boat. So if you can like not stress about it and like add to the stress and just like know that it's gonna be like this, then I think you'll be a lot better mentally throughout the weekend.
Everybody hurts and everybody's trying to get as much food in as possible.
Yeah.
Brad, thank you as always for joining us. And if people want to get started, they can reach out to you directly, or they can go on the Apex website as well as Instagram. Get your free consultation today. And Alex, thank you for jumping on as well. You have some great advice, and good luck in the rest of your season that has now just kicked off. We're in it now.
Thanks, Lauren. Appreciate you.